Please note, this episode contains some misinformation, opinions, and rhetoric that is hurtful to the trans community. For corrections and a counter viewpoint, listen to episode 265 with Jessie Nieusma. Okay, the time is now. This is Jay Brown Yoga Talks podcast. My name is Jay Brown. Have we met before? If not, welcome to you. If we have, how's it going? How's everybody doing? Did you have an okay week? I am coming to you on Saturday afternoon. My wife took the girls out and they left me home alone. And I was just sitting here looking out the window at a clear blue sky on a sunny Saturday afternoon. And I thought, why don't I do the intro for the podcast now? Instead of like late at night where I'm all like in my head and like in a dark mode. Why don't I try to bring like a Saturday, it is what it is kind of vibe this week? So that's what we're doing. I wonder where you are when this meets your ear. I hope it finds you in decent spirits. That really seems to be my challenge these days, is just keeping myself in decent spirits. I'd like to think that we're in the home stretch, but I don't know. I don't know. We're just hanging in there, right? We're all just hanging in there. What else are we going to do? But right now, in this moment, just sitting here looking out the window, it doesn't matter in this moment that I am talking to you. And I suppose on some level, while you're listening to this, on some level, it doesn't matter. We'll just continue to do the best we can, and we'll let that be enough. Does that sound reasonable? I have to warn you, I have a challenging talk today. It's good that I'm on like a chill Saturday afternoon vibe to introduce today's conversation because it is a very challenging topic. And, you know, sometimes people will email me and they'll be upset when I try to tackle other topics or difficult topics that aren't directly like geeking out on yoga stuff. They say, stick to the yoga. And I get that. I understand that. And you know, I normally geek out on yoga stuff. But sometimes I feel that there are issues that seem like there needs to be a conversation around it. And it does feel like part of my yoga to have those conversations. In particular, today's because my guest is Katchie Ananda. And Katchie was my first ever yoga teacher. She's been on the show before years ago. And, you know, even before I reached out to Katchie to have this conversation with her, I have a very dear friend of mine who made mention of, I don't even know what you call it, like some issues, some dilemmas, some ethical dilemmas, some, I don't know, questions and discussions that would maybe want to be had around this idea of gender spectrum and biological sex. And, you know, up until talking to my friend about this, I had heard, you know, the phrase trans rights. And in my mind, that meant everybody gets equal protection under the law, no discrimination. Everybody gets to be who they want to be, and we don't have like society telling them what they're supposed to be. I'm all for that. Absolutely. If that's what trans rights is, I'm all for trans rights. But as I was come to made aware of, there seems to me like more to it than just that. And I should add that this friend of mine, I don't know how she would want me to identify. I know she uses she pronouns, I believe, but when I asked her like what her identity was, she she didn't really give me a straight answer. Like, is she lesbian? Is she queer? She's been involved in like the gay lesbian community for a long time, and she's not like a straight friend of mine. She's my, I don't know what I'm supposed to call her, but she's a dear close friend for many years. And she's not the person I would have expected to be taking like a strong stance on biological sex. But she is, and she pointed to me all these resources, and I was reading about this, and Glenn Greenwald was just talking about this recently too. It's out there some. And then I got an email from Katchie, and in it she made mention of the fact that she had sort of become active in this conversation, and that she had written something about it and sort of been canceled for it. Or like people attempted to cancel her, I guess. And I just thought, what? Like, both of these people in my life, this friend and my teacher, Katchie, they're both people who really, in my mind, kind of, I don't know, embody openness to all people. Like, they're both friends of mine who help me understand what it means to really be interconnected to everything and to treat everyone as your equal and friend, you know, like they open me to be a better person. And then to have them sort of be accused of like being like anti-trans, like they came after Katchie like she's anti-trans, and I was like, what? Katchie's not anti-anything. So in any case, there's a lot to it, and it is a difficult topic. And so, you know, if you're not in the mood for a challenging, heavy topic, you might want to come back to this another time, is all I'm saying. Like, content warning. I don't normally give content warnings, but I want to warn you, this is a challenging conversation that we're having today that I think is important to be had. Let me also say that I have reached out to several trans yoga teachers that I am aware of. I would love to speak to someone who has a direct lived experience of that identity, who maybe has something to say to this conversation as well. And if someone is listening right now, or you know somebody who might be willing to talk to me, please do reach out. You can get to me through the website. But I am grateful to Katchie because she is speaking her truth. And that's become a kind of cliche thing to say sometimes these days. But Katchie was the first person I met in my life who really did that. And so I am glad to have reconnected with her after all these years, and that she's having the courage to say the things that she feels need to be said, even though it may upset people or though it may cause waves. She's always been, you'll hear, we talk about it. Like, Katchie has never been one to hold her tongue on matters that she felt were important. And this is no exception. I am very appreciative that she was willing to have this conversation with me, and I'm glad that you're going to get to hear it today. Real quick before we do, let me thank some premium podcast subscribers. Specifically today, Justine Smith and Eleanor Dunn. Thanks, Justine and Eleanor, and everybody else who's subscribed. We really appreciate it. If you're somebody who listens to the show on a regular and you want to support the show, or you want to get access to the full archives, if you've noticed, like the most recent 52 episodes are always part of the free feed. But if you want to go deeper into the archives, and there's lots of great stuff there, you can become a podcast premium subscriber to do that. It is choose your rate, and you can cancel at any time. If you don't have any money right now, just email us, because we will totally give you a free account. But if you are able to contribute, it's really making a huge difference. We're grateful to all of you. You can find out about becoming a podcast premium subscriber, along with all of my other stuff, the live stream classes, Teacher's Call, the online workshop, Gentle is the New Advanced. All of my stuff can be found at jbrownyoga.com. All right, y'all. I think that I'm going to just leave it there. I will touch base with you on the other side, but for now, I think I'm going to get back to this cup of tea and this Saturday afternoon and leave you to this conversation that I had with Katchie Ananda. Hi, Katchie.
Hi, Jay. I've been a little nervous about this because we're not on yet, right?
We are. We're recording right now. We're recording right now.
We're already recording. Okay.
Yes, we're in it. And I like that you said that. I'm a little nervous too, but it's okay.
Yeah, I'm a little nervous.
It's okay. I mean,
I had,
was there something you wanted to say that you can say that everybody else is going to hear?
Of course. Yeah. No, I just it's been on my mind and, so I've been kind of, had a couple of sleepless nights where I was, weighing my words and how am I going to say this? And, I'm kind of known as a blunt yoga teacher. You remember?
I do.
I've never held back on what I have to say. And it's just, truly remarkable that this would to state perfect truth would be so controversial. It's just, if you had this even 2 years ago, 3 years ago, I would have thought you're crazy. It's just unimaginable that this is where we are at. So,
well, there's some of the things that are on the table to talk about. I don't know how to start any of them. But what I was thinking is that, the other day when we spoke on the phone and I said, okay, well, let's stop here and save it for the podcast. You said something to me that I've been thinking about ever since. You said, you don't even sure you consider yourself part of the yoga world anymore. And my heart dropped a little bit because you were my first teacher. You're the first person who really inspired me on whatever path I'm on in this yoga thing. And I'm so grateful for that. And the idea that you didn't feel like you had a home in the yoga world anymore was felt very sad to me. And I wondered what are we defining yoga world as? And I will also say that I did have a conversation with Carol Horton some while back where she had a similar sort of excommunication from the yoga world or whatever for maybe some similar reasons, but different issues, I guess. So I'm wondering, maybe people who are listening to this, they don't have any idea what we're talking about right now. So can you trace it back to me, when you first started to feel this divergence happening? Because in my memory, it was before the pandemic, when the Me Too thing in the yoga world was really big on Facebook. I kind of recall you having some common thread skirmishes. Can you remember back when you first started to feel some kind of divergence happening or something?
Yes. So it really started. So first, I want to just start with a little bit of my history because I actually have been a social justice. I don't even like to say this word anymore because I feel like it's gone so far over the goal post that I don't even know what that means anymore. But I have been a social justice warrior for a long time. I've always fought on the front line for minorities and for LGBT and human rights and minority rights and animals' rights and the environmental rights of water and air. So I've always been at the front line, and this has always been so important to me. So I guess it started. So I wanted to say that. And,
well, just to verify, I remember you speaking about things when I practiced with you in the 90s, and I read Diet for a New America. I remember you turned me onto a bunch of things in terms of those causes.
Yes. So this has always been important to me. I was married to a Black Brazilian man, and now I'm married to a man that is part Native. And I found out I actually have some Roma lineage which explains maybe why I've been such a gypsy all my life, like been, going from living in so many places and continents and speaking so many languages and never quite settling. It's kind of interesting. So yes, I have been, as they say, around the block a few times. So, and I've been going along with, what the whatever the current theme was. Like, of course, I had in San Francisco, I had one of the first real yoga studio for the people. We had actually a big LGBT community that came. I hired a butch lesbian, and I remember when she was in my yoga classes a lot, and I literally picked her out to. She is very wise, and I picked her out to teach at the studio, and she was like, "Me?" And I'm like, "Yes, you are perfect." She was like, "But I'm not really your typical, kind of white yogini type person." I'm like, "Exactly." Because yoga is for everybody. And yoga is, I was so tired of where yoga, that was many years ago, like 20 years ago, where yoga was going. I was already very tired of that. I was like, this is bullshit. Like, yoga shouldn't be just for like bendy middle class white women. And so I on purpose cultivated these other demographics, and we had a Spanish yoga class because we were in a Spanish neighborhood in San Francisco, and on and on. So I was very early on. I was fighting for that equality in the yoga world, so that yoga would truly come to the people. And this teacher I had, this lesbian teacher, she was basically bringing in like so many gays and like people who normally wouldn't find their way to a yoga class. Like it was so fun, like to see them. Like she would put them over a block. I remember put them over a block, these big gay guys. She would then put over a block, and they started sobbing because she would tell a story, and it was fabulous. So this was so important to me. So a couple of years ago, this is just the intro. A couple of years ago, a good friend of mine, a lesbian, came to me and she said, "Katchie, did you know that lesbians are under duress?" And I said, "Yeah, well, of course they are. They've always been under duress." And she said, "Yeah, but what is new is like lesbians are under duress from within the community, from within the rainbow community." And I was like, "What are you talking about? You're insane." Like, she's like, "Yeah, like lesbian bars are disappearing. Young lesbians are coerced into accepting male-bodied people," is what she said. I had absolutely no idea what she was talking about. I was like, "What are you talking about?" And so then, being me, I started investigating. It was very hard, even 3 years ago. It was very hard to find anything, but then I just kept on finding these little crumbs. And I kept on finding new things, and I'm part of enormous groups, grassroots groups that have been building all over the world. And so, and the longer the more I found out, the more horrified I was. Like, this is very strange. What's happening? And so I wrote a blog on my website, which I also published. It's also published in Women's Voices out of LA, and I wrote that blog, and that's when things went topsy-turvy. I was like, just like I've always done. I was like, oh my God, I found out something that doesn't seem quite right, and I'm going to talk about it because that's what I do. And then the backlash started.
Well, forgive me. I feel unprepared in this moment because I didn't read that blog before talking to you today. Can you tell me what like the overarching points or what it was that people were so upset about in what you wrote?
Well, so I'm going to get right to the heart of things. The fight is now for biological sex. And so biological sex is no longer accepted as science or evolutionary biology. It is no longer accepted in academia, in any of the big corporations, and organizations worldwide. It's basically sex. The concept of sex, biological sex, has been replaced with gender identity. And gender identity is now basically a feeling which largely is based on stereotypes of being male or female. So like female stereotypes and male stereotypes. So if you are a young person and you identify more with, say, masculine traits such as maybe climbing trees or mathematical things, or things that sometimes are assigned to male people. So if you're a girl and you ascribe to these types of things, then there's immediately the question whether you are in the wrong body, and vice versa. If you're you're a man, but you identify more with female stereotypes, such as liking perhaps makeup or knitting, I don't know, whatever, is ascribed to female people, then again, you might be in the wrong body and you might be really a woman. So the concept of sex, which is rooted in biology, has been replaced with this unidentifiable identity of gender in your head. And that's where the problem is.
Okay, well, let me unpack that a little bit. First
Please.
of all, I had a friend on the show, Ryan, some while back. We spoke about different gender identities and even about some of infighting or whatever in the LGBTQ community. And, I have another friend who, I don't know how this person would want to identify. I think maybe queer, but maybe not. Maybe they just don't want to be in any box, which I can appreciate.
Right.
But this is a person who turned me on to some of what you're talking about before I saw that you were talking about it as well. And, for me, I guess what I want to first say is, because I already have a sense of what the initial pushback is, when you say that we no longer accept biological sex, to some people that's like a dog whistle for not supporting trans rights or something like that. And I think that for me, when someone says trans rights or LGBTQ rights, as you were sort of saying earlier, in my mind, that is that everybody gets treated equally, like justice and equality for all. So you should be able to marry whoever you want to marry. You should be able to be with your partner in the hospital and have the same legal rights that everybody has. We shouldn't be discriminating against people when they're not fitting into, harmful gender, norms. But
yes.
That's very different than other things that are happening. Because I saw even a recent press conference for the Biden administration where somebody asked I was watching this press conference because I was really curious to see how different now it is that we have an actual press conference or whatever. And somebody asked the press secretary about this issue. They asked about men who were transitioning into being women and then competing in women's sports and dominating the field. And the press secretary gave a totally stock answer about believing in trans rights. And I thought, oh, wait a second. Isn't that kind of isn't there a lot of nuance to this issue? And then the other thing that I want to point out that is sort of more disturbing, which I think is more where you were pointing, is I also had my friend pointing me to some stuff just about how there are children, young children, under 12 years old even, who are taking puberty blockers and having like surgical interventions on their sex organs. And, my feeling is, I think if somebody is so inclined to do that, I would support them. I'm not going to tell anybody what to do, but for the same reason that, we don't let people vote until they're 18 or buy alcohol till they're 21, it would seem to make sense that we would have some kind of like wait till someone's of a certain age to make sure that they're fully making this decision for the right reasons or whatever. So anyway, all of that is a long way around, but it all does kind of connect to some of what you're saying, and this idea that there's no biological sex and that someone can just decide to change their sex.
Yes. So we believe that you cannot change your sex. And I'll come back to that in a little bit later. You can live as the opposite sex, for sure, but you cannot physically change your sex. There's more than 6,500 differences between men and women. Like, remember the TV show Bones? Mm-hmm. It probably will not survive much longer because it's considered transphobic now, because you can dig up your bones in 1,000 years and they will still be able to tell whether this was a female or a male based on your skeleton. It doesn't matter how that person identified. So it's just, there has been a blurring of these lines between gender and sex. So women have all along, like typically what's happening on the right is that sex and gender are interchangeable. It's actually beautiful that we have a distinction. Sex is a biological reality, and as we are mammals, we come in a binary. It is true. And like I said, I will come back to that in a little bit about intersex, which is often used to justify that sex is on a spectrum, but it's just not true. But gender, so the right usually says, well, gender and sex are the same thing. And feminists have always believed that is not true, that like there are very like butch lesbians. There are females who have more male typical identification, and that, so gender should be on a spectrum, but not sex. Sex cannot be on a spectrum, but gender should be. So with other words, that when you are a female and you have male interests, you should be free to explore that. You used to be called a tomboy as a girl when you had that, or a feminine man. Men should be able to wear a skirt. They should be able to express themselves freely on like the spectrum of gender. But today it's literally that if you identify with the opposite stereotypes, then you want to like adjust the body. Like you want to basically, the body somehow is wrong and you want to change the body. And so here is the big truth bomb. The problem with it is that it's being supported by a $1 trillion industry. I say that again. It is being supported by a $1 trillion industry. There is so much money to be made with this gender, when you have to interfere with what I call the innocent little creature body. So you can these surgeries, these puberty blockers, as you said, the cross-sex hormones. This is all cost money, and you literally have a lifelong patient. So you cannot, there is no magic wand that will turn your body from a female to a male or vice versa. So you can do that. You can try to change your second sex characteristics by creating breasts or neo-penis or a neo-vagina, but it is surgically created. So there's no magic wand that is being woven. And it really worries me that there is so much money behind this. And people don't know about this. And the other problem that, like, we would have solved this a long time ago if people like me were able to speak about this. But guess what's been happening? Women, any women, whether it's in academia, whether she is in authors or feminists or lesbians, doesn't matter. Any woman who speaks out about this in any ways, who questions the new gender orthodoxy, which basically says you can choose your sex, you can choose your gender, is basically shut down. And like, not just shut down, but like hunted like witches. Like, people are ostracized, they're deplatformed, they're silenced, they are thrown off, they are fired from their jobs, which is why this has been going as far as it has. It's really a problem. It's like now, like, laws are changing all over the world that basically make it impossible to speak about female related things. Like in England yesterday, they introduced a bill that was for maternity. It was all related to maternity and female reproductive organs and pregnancy. In this bill, it was like pages and pages long. The word woman did not appear once. Not once. It was literally, the word woman has become an unmentionable word. Women are now being called vagina havers. Women are being called uterus havers. And what's interesting about that, Jay, what I thought, like, you know, and that's how I can tell the misogyny underneath it all, is that it's only for women that we are called this way. Men are not. Like, I've never heard men officially in any official bills or newspapers or anywhere as ejaculators or ball havers or prostate havers. Never, ever. Like, the category of men somehow has remained untouched. They're men and uterus havers, or people with vaginas, or pregnant people. You know, for a little while ago, I did a post when the UN came out with pregnant people. And I said simply, how about sharing? You know, it's like, I think it's important to maintain sex, like women, like 51% of people in the world are women, people who identify and are women. And then there are a few who are trans or whatever. That's fine. Why don't we share? Like, I'm happy to share. Like, why don't we say there are women and pregnant people? Why not? For the non-binary people and for anybody who identifies differently. Oh my God, I was basically shut down on my own page for daring to suggest such a thing that we could maybe share. You know, like, we've only had a couple of decades, literally, where it's been okay for women to talk about their vaginas. It's like, I remember a time when vagina was an unmentionable word. Like, we were not allowed to talk about our vaginas. So finally we gained the right.
I remember when the vagina monologues came out on, like, off Broadway in New York. I was here. It was like a big deal that it had that in the title.
Yep. And now it's unmentionable again. Like, there's even an all-women's college, like a college for women who threw out the monologue because it didn't want to be offensive to the one or two trans women in that college. So they threw it out. Even though Eve Ensler actually, she actually did a monologue for inclusive of trans women specifically. So my question is, why can't we do both? But no, we can't. Like, apparently vagina monologue is out. Like, you cannot no longer mention the word woman or vagina unless that is people with vaginas.
So, I mean, the idea is that if you try to make the distinction of woman and vagina, you're somehow being derogatory towards people who transition into being women. Is that the idea there?
Well, it's considered hurtful because most of the trans women don't have vaginas.
I see. So defining woman as vagina excludes them. I get that. Well, maybe we can talk about the intersex thing, because I sent you that thing. In trying to educate myself some about this, I watched this TED Talk, I think I sent it to you, of this woman who's intersex and talking about that and showing how, because she has both male and female organs in her, it would show that gender's on sex is on a spectrum like gender.
Yeah, I'm happy to clear that up because, to tell you the truth, I have an intersex friend, and they are generally very tired of being used in this fight. Like they feel like their status is being weaponized in the war by gender ideology. So it actually, your sex is like, that's the new claim now, that your sex is assigned at birth, but that is not true. Your sex is observed and recorded. And the fact that intersex people exist does not negate the fact that human beings are a sexually dimorphic species, like mammals. Mm-hmm. Some babies are born with only one leg. That does not negate the fact that humans are a bipedal species. So I'm just going to read you this little piece from a friend of mine who sent this to me, just to clear this up. So humans are a dimorphic species like all mammals, and we are either male or female. No child has ever been born with both sets of functional genitals. In the extremely rare circumstances of ambiguous genitals, a simple blood test will clarify. So the bottom line is, being intersex has nothing to do with being trans. So here is the skinny on that. Sex is biological, and 99.98% of humans are either straight up male or female with no ambiguities. So 99.98. It's determined at conception and fertilization, and is observable in every cell, every system, all our hormones, every organ, and in our entire biology. Sex is observed. Sex is not assigned. It is observed as a physical, material, and biological fact. Ultimately, it's all about gametes. I think you say gametes. If you produce sperm, you are male. If you produce ova, you are female. So no human was ever born without a haploid contribution of both male and female gametes. And as regards intersex, this occurs in about 0.017% of humans, and every case is a disorder of sexual development of either a male or a female. We have a ton of good data, and the DSD categories are well understood genetically. These are genetic disorders, 6 biological karyotype sex disorders that do not result in immediate death to the fetus. So, for example, X, roughly 1 in 2,000 or 1 in 5,000 people, is called Turners. 2 X's, most common form of female, roughly 1 in 500 to 1 in 1,000 people, which is called Klinefelter. So it goes on from there. It's basically, you can have a variety of XY chromosomes, and you are still going to be either male or female.
Now,
if you are a 40,
well, let me just say for a second, because there's a word that you keep using that, like, is my alarms going off when you use the word disorder. Like, I think that is intended to be a technical term more than like meaning that people who are intersex are somehow like there's something wrong with them, because even in that video of that TED Talk, that intersex person was basically saying that when that person was born, the doctors told her parents that they had to decide, or they were instructing them to remove to do a surgical intervention to remove the balls inside of her or whatever it was. And they chose not to. And she was glad that they didn't. And it was about not surgically intervening. And the person was saying, my body's fine the way it is, even though I don't fit into even though I have some extra chromosomes or whatever it is, you know?
Absolutely. But it is a disorder. It's an anomaly of one or the other. It doesn't make you less worthy. Like, it's just like when you have any other anomaly that you're born with, it doesn't make you lesser human. It makes you different, but it doesn't make you lesser. So yes, if you have ambiguous anomalies, like, let's not say disorder, let's say anomaly, even though these are biological terms.
How about when we say miracle happenings? You know, let's frame them as a good thing. They don't have to be a bad thing, right?
No, it doesn't have to be a bad thing. I actually think like people who are special, like think of it as like Down syndrome. You know, somebody with Down syndrome, it's like, I have so many friends who have a child with Down syndrome, and they say that this was the biggest blessing that they have ever received. Like, so it makes you special when there is anomaly, but it doesn't make you less. So this is something that we have to, I think, understand that, that we have this tendency to judge or put value, like it's lesser or more. Well, you know, this is part of what I've been fighting all my life for. It's like even animals have right. They're not lesser. They're not, you know, in our mind, they're lesser, and then we can do with whatever we want. Or even the environment. There's nothing lesser or better. So it's, you know, with male and female also, like male and female are not the same. They're two distinct categories. They're different. But it doesn't mean that they are less worthy. They're equal in worth. They're just different. And that goes through everything. And, you know, it makes me sad that the intersex condition is being used to justify that sex is on the spectrum. It is not on the spectrum. It really isn't. It's like mammals are coming in two sexes. Mammals are coming in two sexes. That doesn't go for frogs, or some amphibians can change sex. It is true. There are several other species that can do that spontaneously, change from female to male and so forth. But mammals do not. It doesn't happen in mammals. We cannot change sex. We can live as the opposite sex, but we cannot change it.
Now, that question of can we change sex or not, like, I think again, to me, the idea of like body modification, I would be inclined to let people do what they want to do with their bodies. You know, I wouldn't want to stand in the way between someone and their own body. But it is a little bit.
Thank you. Me too.
But it is disturbing, like some of the things I saw, like kind of convergence of like helicopter parenting, and this idea that sex is a spectrum does seem to have led to some instances where parents are sort of like, I don't know, encouraging transitioning in people who I feel like are really young.
Yes. So let me address that, because you're absolutely right. Like if it had been adults who are transitioning, I have trans friends, and you know what? Many of them are actually now fighting on our side, because they see what the harm that it's doing. And by the way, there is a enormous amount of detransitioners already, and they're also being silenced. It's crazy. Like they don't have a voice, but it is true, because they transition. There was just a very important case one in England of Kira Bell, who basically feel like she was almost pushed into transition because she was actually a lesbian. So she thought like, her parents were slightly homophobic, I think. And they wanted rather a straight son than a lesbian daughter. And that unfortunately seems to be the case quite a bit, that parents prefer to have, there's still a lot of homophobia, and then they prefer to transition. For example, in Iran, it is like homosexuality is punishable by death, but transition is allowed. So
oh wait, that's really intense. So if you were like in a religion where homosexuality is considered like a sin or whatever, punishable by death or whatever, then if you can transition and pass for the other sex, then you get out of that or whatever.
Exactly.
Whoa.
So whatever adults do, is none of my business. You're absolutely right. But it is alarming. I have a friend in Marin. She works at a hospital and as a full-time nurse. And she said to me that before COVID, I don't know how it is, I haven't spoken to her in a little bit, but before COVID, she had in one hospital in Marin, she had between 4 and 6 full mastectomies per day with girls as young as 14. So what is happening, Jay, is that, and this is, that's why I'm getting so active. It's like what's happening is that young girls especially, but women in general, are being hypersexualized, and there's a feminine hypersexualization going on, and a lot of young girls are feeling very uncomfortable with that. I know, because I was a gender non-confirming girl too, and I'm bi, so I'm part of the LGBT, if you like, because I'm bi.
If you are hearing this message, then you're listening to the free version of J. Brown Yoga Talks. To hear the rest of our conversation, please subscribe to Podcast Premium at jbrownyoga.com/premium.